What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Purple Bear Biology. If this is your first time visiting with me, I'm Professor Hurley, and we discuss anatomy, physiology, microbiology, and general principles of biology on this channel. If all of those sound awesome to you, you should subscribe so you can continue to follow the channel as it builds on more of these topics. This video is going to explore why muscles grow and shrink, as well as where we get the energy they need to sustain contraction. No doubt our bodies require an enormous amount of energy to effectively sustain muscle contraction. So where does all that energy come from? And do different activities influence how energy is used? We are going to talk about those questions and some other cool facts about what gives us fuel for our muscles to operate. Let's start this conversation by taking a look at muscle use and then move into how we get energy for those muscles to utilize.
Did you know that if you do not use your muscles, they will actually get smaller over time? This is referred to as atrophy. Muscle atrophy results in a decrease in the number of myofibrils in each of the muscle cells. There are many different causes of muscle atrophy, but severe cases tend to revolve around prolonged disuse due to surgery or paralysis. Prolonged disuse causes the cells to become smaller and have less strength. On the flip side, however, if you use your muscles, they can grow in size by increasing the size and number of myofibrils. Size increases from using your muscles in this way puts stress on the fiber. This results in tears that have to be repaired. The myofibrils in response get thicker and more numerous. This happens anytime you lift something heavy and is the result when someone uses weights for resistance training. You may be asking yourself, if stress results in muscles getting larger, then why don't runners have massive legs? Well, they do tend to have very strong legs, but in this case, the type of stress matters. Stress induced by endurance training, like running, is actually very energetically demanding for prolonged periods of time. To overcome this type of stress, our muscle cells actually become more effective at making ATP. We'll talk more about ATP synthesis in a second. But first, did you know that you actually have different types of muscle cells? We have kind of been referring to them all collectively as muscle cells in general, but you actually have two primary types of muscle cells. Some are larger and more effective at strength and power, while others are more effective at endurance activities. Muscle cells built for the latter are called slow twitch muscle cells and are built for aerobic activities like long distance running or high repetition exercise. Conversely, fast twitch muscle cells are built for short burst activities like weightlifting and sprinting that are more anaerobic. But what do the words aerobic and anaerobic have to do with these muscle fibers? So first we must recall from our other muscle discussions that muscle contraction needs ATP. If you didn't watch those videos, look for a link in the description section below. Now that ATP can get generated in two primary ways. One involves aerobic breakdown of glucose that uses oxygen and potentially produces massive amounts of ATP. This ATP production process is what is needed to sustain high energetic demands of continuous prolonged contraction and uses mitochondria to produce the ATP. This pathway is preferred because it produces the most ATP. Our bodies actually start activities in this manner because we have some oxygen available inside of our muscle tissues as we start activities like exercise. However, quickly that oxygen will get used up, and it takes some time for the oxygen intake to replenish the oxygen concentrations in the muscle tissue. When our muscles use up this initial oxygen, they switch to a process called anaerobic respiration that produces less ATP and leads to a buildup of lactic acid in the tissues and blood. As this buildup occurs, you get that noticeable burn in muscle tissues when they're used. If we continue to perform exercises, eventually our body gets oxygen to the tissues and aerobic metabolism starts up again to sustain endurance activities. So what does all this mean? Well, basically, the activities we perform determine which fibers develop and which type of respiration we utilize. Training in endurance increases our effectiveness at aerobic metabolism, while training in strength increases our effectiveness at short, intense bursts of energy synthesis. If we train in both endurance and strength activities, we build up both systems for comprehensive muscle functionality. Cool fact alert! You may have felt the intense soreness that can occur hours to days after an exercise session. A common misconception is that this soreness is caused by residual lactic acid inside the tissues. But instead, this delayed muscle soreness, referred to as DOMS, is caused by the tears that occur in muscle cell fibers and the repair that must take place for the muscles to fix themselves. Simply put, lactic acid is a temporary burn that you feel during workouts, and DOMS is what will have you taking the elevator instead of the stairs 3 days after a leg workout. Up to this point, you may have noticed that we discussed contraction in the form of an individual muscle fiber, but multiple muscle fibers can work together to increase contractile force. If you've ever looked at something and thought that it looked really light, but when you went to lift it, you stalled and nothing moved. However, as you continued to try to lift it or reset and give it another go, then slowly the weight starts to come up. This is due to a principle called recruitment. Muscle fibers have neurons that connect to them to stimulate contraction. When we discuss one neuron and all of the muscle cells it connects to, we call this a motor unit. During recruitment, the body stimulates more motor units to achieve stronger contraction. There are limits, of course. You only have so many motor units available, and they are compositions of fibers that are capable of only so much pulling force. Okay, so let's finish up this conversation with what happens when we get fatigued. Regardless of how in shape you are, no one can maintain muscle contraction indefinitely. Eventually, your muscles will not be able to contract effectively. This fatigue is caused by multiple factors, but I thought we could discuss the most common. The easiest to understand is depletion. Eventually, you just run out of gas, and it takes time to replenish the energy needed to contract the muscles again. Additionally, if you run out of oxygen, you will be stuck using anaerobic respiration, and that just does not produce enough ATP to continue contraction for long periods of time. One thing that we have not really discussed is the buildup of byproducts of all of the muscle contraction. As waste and nutrients begin to accumulate, they can competitively interfere with one another. This is kind of like if you wanted to walk from one side of a room to another. It is very easy to do if the room is empty, but if we fill the room with people, then it's just going to take longer to get to the other side. Similarly, it just takes time to move the needed ingredients for contraction to their active areas if the fluid has become crowded with other products. The last variable that influences muscle fatigue that we need to discuss is environment. No doubt if you've ever worked in the heat, then you know that it is a tiring process. But why? Well, there are several reasons, but two primary reasons include reduced protein functionality and redirection of blood flow. As our body temperature rises, either due to exercise and or a hot environment, our proteins do not function at optimal performance. Additionally, to maintain temperature homeostasis, our body then directs blood out to the capillaries of our skin to try to deliver the heat out and away from our core. Redirection to these capillaries means that less oxygenated blood is going directly to our muscles. Thus, ATP synthesis is compromised and we become fatigued more rapidly.
Cellular metabolism is a crazy cool topic, and we just barely brushed the surface of it. Let me know what you think in the comment sections below. If you found the video helpful, be sure to click the like button and subscribe so we can continue to explore cool concepts together. That's it for this episode of Purple Bear Biology. Catch y'all next time, and thanks for watching.